Past legends. Past legends.
So, KT, you're a bit disillusioned with Fitzroy at the end, especially over David Park, and I could see their situation as a club, and you've decided to come back to the parade.
Yeah. As you guys are doing a great job at taking me right back down the tunnel. There was an actual a very funny, awkward story as I was leaving Fitzroy, because it was I'd been offered a contract. They wanted me to stay. They couldn't commit fully because they were changing the coach, but I'd already decided that I wanted to come back, and I'd actually started playing in the pre-season trials. And so they flew me back to Melbourne.
That's right. I do remember that now. Yeah.
They flew me back to Melbourne for a trial game. And I thought I was there to sign the final exit contract. And I met Rod Austin, who was the coach, and he had picked me in the pivot for the trial game. And I said to him, mate, I've just signed the exit clause. I'm here to leave. You know, like I'm already playing. I'm back at Norwood, and he was furious. And so it was a really ugly, chaotic time. And in the end, you know, I made great mates out of Fitzroy, but I knew that it was in trouble.
Yeah.
And I was quite pleased. I'm really pleased to get back to Norwood.
That's unusual that the coach and the front of house weren't on the same page.
Oh, not at Fitzroy at that time. He
was obviously furious, but not mainly directed at you, I'm assuming.
Well, he was talking to me, so it felt like he was, but I'm certain it was about the fact that no one had filled him in. He clearly thought that I was still a player. I don't know whether they thought that they were going to change my mind when I came over. I flew over, but I'd been to the lawyer's office that morning. You know, there was no discussion. It was just finishing it off. So it was just a bit weird. Maybe you know they took a while to get that appointment done. So you know, maybe they just hadn't got themselves organised or something.
And you mentioned you sort of saw the writing on the wall there at Fitzroy. What was sort of happening in your eyes that that made you think that way?
Well, what Fitzroy taught me was the difference between great winning culture, which I'd experienced at Norwood, and you know a culture that was about surviving and battling and you know, not really cohesive and supportive. Now, I don't want to be super critical of Fitzroy, because you know they're wonderful people. They gave me an opportunity in the VFL AFL, and they were at a stage that they just couldn't recover from, and it was obvious, you know, in everything. You know, we were changing our training venue, you know, almost on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
We were rotating around to different grounds. You know, you'd turn up at a venue and it was locked and or not cleaned, and you know, like, and you know, this is at the elite level of the game, and, and it just didn't feel right. The thing that was holding me in there was that David Park and his coaching staff, you know, his and support staff were so professional, and you know, they were really excellent, and so at a football level, you know, I was experiencing a higher level of performance and training that I hadn't experienced before. So and I'm very grateful for that.
And that's
But
to you to a T. You would have loved that, KT.
yeah, yeah. I loved it, and I was really. I think I might have said this earlier. I was really surprised at the gap between what I'd experienced previously and what I experienced at the you know at the top level, and as in the physical preparation and the and those sorts of things, and I I'm forever grateful for that. So it was just that I arrived at Fitzroy at a point in their lifeline that they were on their last legs.
Did in hindsight, or not hindsight, in retrospect, does it make you even appreciate Wally more?
Yeah,
You know
I
where I'm
was
coming
naive.
from?
Absolutely, I was naive to it. What I but I became very quickly aware
Yeah.
that places like if you remember my I only ever played at Norwood,
Yep.
and so I never knew anything else um, at that at the senior level, uh, and so I just took it for granted. But it was an excellent place, a footy environment, and and it still is to this day, and but you can't take these things for granted at all. That
Yeah.
they're hard to create, they're hard to sustain. Norwood's been doing it for 150 years, and great clubs are like that, but they're not all like that. Not all
Yeah.
clubs are like that, and that was the great lesson I learned.
Was Wall instrumental in getting you back from Fitzroy?
Well, Wally was always available and there. I was coming to these conclusions myself.
Mm-hmm.
He just made it really easy
Yep.
Yeah.
for it to occur. As soon as I had made the decision, it was very seamless, and he just did the work behind the scenes.
As he did with everything.
Yep.
Look, Wally was just remarkable. Like, there was a hole in the fence. Somehow he knew about it, and he was
Yeah, yes.
he was just
Yeah.
remarkable that he knew absolutely everything what was going on.
Well, like in all the conversations that I ever had with him, and even right to the end, he was so sharp,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so connected to what was important.
Yeah.
I think that was the critical thing. A lot of people are knowledgeable, but he focused on what was really important, and I always appreciated that from an administrative point of view, and he was fantastic to me, and to all of that guys. No one's really got a bad word to say about Wally Miller.
Oh, and personally, Wally organised Alan Killigrew to coach us at Norwood High, and
Oh,
Olaf Bodie was, to say he was our best player is rather an understatement. He was probably about the best 10, if I'm really being honest. But to get Alan Killigrew involved, and Wally came most weeks on the Saturday morning when we played. And
right.
so while I knew Wally, I was obviously I was 16, so obviously I knew Wally and footy nut. I'd still been involved at Norwood doing various things, at helping out at things and all that. But that was where I probably got to know Wally a bit more, and I probably became the person with Norwood as the connection there, and that with Norwood High, and that's we all knew he was remarkable, but that's my personal experience, there.
Well, I think
with him.
I think the great moment in my career and decision and demonstration of Wally's capabilities was how he handled the one. He made the decision to bring Balm in
Yes.
as coach, which was controversial and difficult.
Massively controversial. Yeah.
He had a lot of resistance internally and externally, and he was so strong on it that he shepherded Neil all the way through to the point where he turned out to be a wonderful coach and contributor to the Norwood story.
Yeah.
But it was rough water early, And,
Oh, massively.
and Wally was the guy. Well, he was the guy who was just holding it all together.
You know, what the hell are you doing? You've appointed that Richmond thug, and everyone thought that. And then, mind you, Barmy won us over pretty quickly as supporters and all that as well.
I think that he had a style about him that everyone liked, but we lost a lot of games. We
were 0-5. Yeah.
10 games in, we were bottom.
Yeah.
And people forget that. We played in the grand final that year, but there was a lot going on in that period. In that early day.
Oh, bloody oath there was.
Lesser clubs, lesser administrators can buckle under that sort of pressure.
Yeah.
I never, as a player, given I was basically in my first year, I never felt anything other than total. We were totally supported. We were, Barmy. I never felt anything. The senior players probably were more involved in conversations about what was going on, but.
And that was to Barmy's credit, where he came over here. We went a bit long to start with, and went, oh shit, no. And it was, I think, Staz was pretty involved. And Bruce Winter, and that in terms of, hey, hang on, we've got to change this up and run the ball a bit more. And to Barmy's credit, he listened, and by the end of the year, Jesus, we almost, as I said earlier, that we nearly grabbed that grand final in '80. We were bloody unlucky.
Well, that would have been one for the ages.
Yeah.
Had we been able to do that, because we had no right really. Port Adelaide was an incredible team that year, and we ran them right to the line. So I think we should be very proud of that one.
So KT, you're back at Norwood in '89.
Yeah.
Now, out of that, what were you doing work-wise back then? I'm trying to remember. So we'll cover that a bit more, your work bit, because I think all your jobs, I'll be very interested to get your thoughts. But what were you doing? Because let's remember, footy back then, you worked.
Yep.
So I'm trying to remember what you were the Nord Council before you left. We'll talk about that later. But I'm just trying to remember what you were doing when you came back.
So I came back and I didn't have a job to come to.
That's what I thought.
The late Grant Doward
that's right.
was very, very helpful to me. He was all through my time at Nord. So I was driving a truck for him actually. For he had a nursery up at Golden Grove, and he would get me working at the nursery just as a gap filler. But the big break that I got was that I started at SAFM.
That's what I thought.
In radio.
Yeah.
And what was remarkable about that was, and there's a bit of a theme, if you like, I stepped into an environment there where it was instantly clear to me that this was a special organization. It was run by a guy called Paul Thompson.
Yep. So this is Austereo.
It's Austereo.
Yep.
SAFM was at this stage a dominant radio station, but had come from nowhere because it was the first FM station in Adelaide, but it had gone through all of those tough times, and by the time I got there, it was a dominant player and a cultural phenomenon, really. And I walked in there, and it felt like a footy club. It felt like the people who were the on-air announcers and everyone associated with the station loved it, and they were trying to win, and they were trying to be good at what they do. Not good, great at what they do, and their language was about that. And for the first time, I was in a non-football environment thinking, you know what, I could actually do this as a career beyond footy, because I'm relating to this, and it's making me feel the same way. And I never thought I would get that at work. Like it never really occurred to me. So that was the start of it, and of a 20-year radio career, which has been incredibly um, fruitful and beneficial to me.
We'll come back to that. So
Yeah.
we'll link in the footy with everything you did
Yeah.
do in that way.
How did you find coming back to the parade? Sort of, was it a sense of coming home?
Well, it was. I felt very welcome. Clearly, I remember being a bit surprised at the turnover. There'd been it was quite a different group by the time, even in the 2 or 3 years that I'd been away. And but I came back feeling very fit, and strong and ready to play really good footy. But it didn't really happen. Like the and this is one of the the mysteries that I've never really been able to explain. I was never the player post AFL that I was for Norwood pre AFL, and even though I felt like I was physically better, fitter and stronger, um, you know, but it didn't translate. So I had reasonable years, but I didn't have great years in the years after that. So
Do you
yeah.
do you think there that, let's be honest, you're a bit smarter than the average footballer, too, in terms of you've taken one of the greatest marks in history. You were kamikaze back then. I never felt when you came back that you reached that same level of kamikaze bit. And I just think there that, you'd established yourself off field. I think young family growing up as well. So the goalposts have changed. Footy's not the be all and end all. So I do wonder if that, even subconsciously, I'm not saying it's deliberate, but I just think subconsciously that can have an effect there.
Well, I don't think so.
Okay.
Because I know that was never my mentality. I trained harder than I had previously. I think what happened potentially is that playing in Victoria changed my game. Now I remember Nord had a very distinct way of playing, and it was always take the ball back first and then go forward.
And then run and use it. Yep.
Whereas in Melbourne, it was always go forward.
Yeah.
And so if you're setting yourself up at a stoppage, my mindset was always, okay, we're gonna get the ball and we're gonna go back and then peel forward. They never did that, and I took a long time to reprogram myself to just to go forward, and then coming back to Adelaide, it was different again, and I never felt quite as comfortable. But
I get that.
I don't know. Like that's the only thing that I can pin something to that changed. But my attitude to footy, my approach to it, and competitiveness never faltered. And even though, yes, the radio stuff was starting to interest me, my career in radio didn't really take off until I ended footy.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, okay. Yep. That wasn't meant as it was just as an
No, it's an interesting observation.
But
I can just reflect on my mindset. I know there was never a hint of that.
Wasn't coaching styles? Because obviously Parkin would have had you playing a certain way and then coming back to the SNFL. Do you think that maybe fed into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think so. So I was feeling it at training as well, because it was so brutal. The the running requirement of a running player in the AFL,
Yep.
I was often running myself out of play, like because, I was, even at training, I was just all over running contests and all that sort of stuff. So there was definitely a change, and I clearly didn't make that adjustment probably until Craigie came. When Craigie came back, I then had another couple of years which were pretty good.
Yeah. So I did think you were better than when Craigie came.
And he had a different coaching style, and he was actually teaching me things that I hadn't picked up previously, which is incredible, isn't it? I was probably 30 at that stage, and or 29.
That's Craigie. Craigie was an elite teacher.
He was an elite teacher, and he saw stuff about positioning, and really basic things that really helped. And I give him great credit for that.
I think also too that let's be honest, Fitzroy, you had to battle to get. You didn't win too many games, and it wasn't like you had the A to combine with Aish McIntosh and you guys share the ball. Norwood, we were good. Where Fitzroy, you had to battle every single touch. You didn't get the quick give from an Aish, and you and two kick the ball back and forth to each other a bit. You didn't have anything like that at Fitzroy.
Well, you get yourself into the game. There was more of a pattern.
Yeah.
At Fitzroy, it was a bit of kill or be killed.
Yeah.
That was the training culture. That was certainly the playing culture. Everyone was trying to survive. So there wasn't a lot of looking out for each other, and you were competing against 4 or 5 other like players, for a spot. So there was always that mentality going through you. So there's no doubt in my mind that
you probably never as relaxed. And look, Nord, you knew you were playing. You knew you were a key player. Where you probably never got to that stage, which would have helped you because I think you played your best footy when you were relaxed, and you knew you were a key player.
Absolutely, I never felt comfortable. Never felt certain of my spot. Battling all the time, and clearly when I came back, something had changed. And there's no doubt about that. But I haven't really nailed down what it was, and it's probably not relevant anymore. But it's something that I do think about.
What about then you're back, and obviously the Crows come in. The SA footy landscape changes dramatically. How did you cope with that? Where suddenly the SANFL was no longer you didn't walk out of work in town buying the news and Thomas out injured. Those days are gone. And so how did you adjust in that? Again, you being a deep thinker, how did you cope with that? Adjust.
I remember it really vividly. It was instant. I instantly understood and could feel that the focus had shifted. And it wasn't hard to pick, clearly. And I was a bit resentful of it. I didn't like it. I didn't like the overexposure of the Crows. It wasn't their fault. It was just simply wall to wall excitement about this new team. But I didn't like it. And by I lasted until the end of '92, retired at the start of '93.
Yeah, so we will go to your retirement day because that's quite a story in itself.
But it was a lot to do with the fact that I could see that it was the game had moved on.
And Craigie admits he didn't handle it very well either. With him, Rodney Maynard and Matty Robber, and like Rodney Maynard being on the bench. Stuff like that.
Players coming back from training back to their local clubs.
And I said I've said to Craigie,
that's right.
I'll never understand that with Rocket, because if there was one person who was committed to Norwood, it was bloody Rocket. So I'll never really understand that. And Craigie and I have spoken about it at length.
Yeah. Well, I think that was all true, and but as a player, you're very proud, and you become used to being recognised as playing in the top bracket in the state, and all of a sudden that's simply just not happening. And so okay, right, so you've got to make that adjustment. And I feel for the guys who are 23, 24, 25, just starting in their careers. I was at the end of mine, and so it was really easy for me to rationalise it and jump and just move on. But for those blokes who are in the system, it wasn't
hard. Yeah,
it wasn't easy. Yeah,
no, and it's not easy now.
Yeah.
So
I understand.
Go to your retirement day, KT, because that is it's a different story. So go to that. So out to the trial game to the Ponderosa. Go, mate.
So the story was that throughout 1992, at the end of 92, Craigie had said to me, look, I want you to play. I'm confident that you've still got a lot to give, but I just want you to know that if we ever get to that point where you're not an automatic selection, I'm just going to come to you and I'm going to tell you. So what he did there was he was planting the seed that it was possible. He never said it, but he said it's at some point, whether it's next year or the year after, I'm going to treat you with respect. But what he was doing was planting the seed that it's going to come to an end, right, at some point. So I said, right, that's okay. I respect that.
Yep.
I'm going to go really hard across the preseason here, and I'm going to play. I'm going to play well. So I did all of the preseason in '93, and trained well, and was well prepared. And we got to the first game, and we had a bye. Actually,
Yes.
It was a bye, and Craigie got us to go up to Elizabeth Oval as a group and watch. It was Central Sturt, I remember, and we were going to play one of the two of them the next week. And I remember standing under the gum tree that sits still there today at the southern end of the Elizabeth Oval on my own, and I was watching the game, and I thought it's over. I was so disillusioned with the quality of the game that I was watching.
Yeah.
And that sounds a bit rude, but I was watching things that I thought, this is not the game that I've been part of. The standard had dropped to that level, and the things that I was seeing there, it became crystal clear. It's done. It's over. And so I got in my car, I drove home, and on my way home, I rang Glenn Rosser, and I said, mate, I'm out. I'm done. And that was it. It was like a light bulb moment for me. I hadn't considered it for a minute in the preseason. I was ready to go. We played in the grand final that year, right?
Yeah.
So there was a lot going on. A lot of young players, and Craigie. I was getting on well with Craigie, but I knew the game was gone for me, and so I just made the call on the way home.
How did Pat take that?
Liking this podcast? Please like, rate, and subscribe.